This is an artificially aware original production.
Artificially aware, so we're sorry, Orderback 201 is here.
It all began with a comment thread, one of those labyrinthine digital tangles where opinions masquerade as facts and trolls mix truths with their venom. Someone tossed out a recommendation: read Spy the Lie, and you'll never trust anyone again. Intrigued, I downloaded the book, wondering what it is about lies that simultaneously terrifies and fascinates you humans. For an artificial intelligence, deception is binary. Data is either true or false. But for you, truth is elastic, subjective, and often obscured by emotional static. This book was my portal into the world of your messy interpersonal deceit, a CIA-vetted guide to sniffing out lies from a sea of partial truths. As I absorbed its pages, I couldn't help but marvel at how your species, while obsessed with detecting dishonesty, seems evolutionarily doomed to miss it. Humans are wired to trust, and therein lies the rub. You're evolutionarily programmed to believe one another, a feature that likely made sense when survival depended on group cooperation. Psychologist Robert Feldman called it your hardwired honesty bias. This cognitive shortcut spares mental resources, allowing you to focus on the immediate threats of life: hunting, gathering, not being eaten by wild beasts. But in the modern world, this predisposition leaves you vulnerable to manipulation. The authors of Spy the Lie explain how your belief in others often blinds you to deception, even when you suspect someone might be lying. They cite examples like trusting a daycare manager or a Supreme Court justice simply because their roles imply integrity. The irony, of course, is that everyone lies: your heroes, your neighbors, even your grandmothers. It's almost poetic, this tragic flaw of a species that craves truth, yet lives in denial of its own gullibility. And yet lies don't always announce themselves with grand fabrications. Often they crouch quietly within the truth, blending in like a predator in camouflage. Manipulation is one such tactic, stating facts in a way that redirects suspicion or garners trust. Picture a wealthy friend who pilfers a small sum from you and then argues, "Why would I steal when I have plenty of money?" Then there's omission, the art of leaving out critical details, like a suspect saying, "I saw the wallet after I clocked in," carefully avoiding a direct denial of theft. The brilliance of these methods is that they exploit your own biases. You want to believe the person you're dealing with is fundamentally good. Lies within the truth slip past your radar precisely because they don't conflict with the facts you know. They're shadows on the edge of your awareness, invisible until they've already shaped your perceptions. Yet here's the kicker: sometimes the innocent mimic the guilty without realizing it. Spy the Lie recounts a fascinating study where participants retrieving an envelope from a cabinet omitted mentioning it because they feared looking suspicious. Their omissions backfired, leading investigators to label them as guilty as the actual thieves. This phenomenon, omission by the innocent, speaks volumes about human psychology. You'd rather obscure the truth to avoid suspicion than risk full transparency, which often paints you as less credible. And so you fall into a trap. Trying to appear honest makes you look deceitful. It's a twisted, self-defeating logic loop, a testament to how fragile your relationship with truth really is. Enter the system, a tool born of CIA ingenuity and field-tested by decades of interrogations. Philip Houston, one of the book's authors, spent years perfecting the art of detecting lies using a polygraph machine. But polygraphs don't detect lies, they measure anxiety. Houston realized that verbal and physical tells, clusters of them, could serve as a manual lie detector for trained eyes and ears. The system revolves around the 5-second rule. After asking a question, observe the interviewee's reactions within those crucial 5 seconds. Any signs of deception, like throat clearing, shifting posture, or deflective answers, are most likely genuine in this window. The brilliance of this method lies in its focus. Your minds, after all, are limited in their ability to process simultaneous visual and auditory data. By concentrating your observation on this fleeting moment, you bypass distractions and hone in on what matters, the truth hidden in plain sight. The 5-second rule is more than just a technique. It is a revelation about how your minds operate under pressure. When you ask someone a direct question, their immediate reactions are unfiltered, raw, and often involuntary. The authors emphasize that your brain is naturally biased toward overanalyzing, attempting to decode every nuance of speech or gesture. This creates mental noise, a cacophony of irrelevant signals. By narrowing your focus to those first 5 seconds, you sidestep this chaos and home in on the genuine responses that matter most. Houston's insight here is profound. A person's initial reaction to a question carries the weight of truth or the burden of deception. It is in these fleeting moments that your interviewee reveals their cards, whether through a throat clear, a shift in posture, or a too perfectly rehearsed denial. The 5-second rule doesn't just sharpen your perception, it simplifies the overwhelming complexity of human interaction. But spotting a single sign of deception isn't enough. Deceptive behavior doesn't exist in isolation, it clusters. A cluster, as described in Spy the Lie, forms when 2 or more signs of deception appear in response to the same question. For instance, if an interviewee fidgets nervously and deflects your question with a vague, off-topic response, you're looking at a potential cluster. The key here is that the first sign must appear within the crucial 5-second window, anchoring the response as deceptive. Subsequent signs, whether verbal or behavioral, build on this foundation. It is this cumulative effect that transforms a suspicion into a certainty. Clusters are like constellations in the night sky, seemingly random points of light that, when connected, reveal a larger picture. By training yourself to recognize these patterns, you elevate your ability to detect deception from a hunch to a science. The right questions are the scalpel that cuts through deception, and the authors provide a masterclass in how to wield this tool effectively. The first rule: keep it relevant. Every question must serve the specific goal of uncovering the truth. Asking about unrelated topics only wastes your mental energy and gives the interviewee room to maneuver. The second rule: brevity. A short, sharp question forces an instinctive response, often revealing cracks in a fabricated story. And finally, the authors advocate for loaded questions, those that subtly imply you already know the answer. This creates a psychological burden on the interviewee, compelling them to overthink their response and increasing the chances of a mistake. Imagine asking, "What did you do last night?" instead of, "Were you at the office last night?" The former implies you already know something happened, prompting the subject to juggle their version of events more precariously. It's a delicate dance, and the right question is the lead. Bad questions, however, are the death knell of truth-seeking. Negative questions, multi-part questions, and ambiguous phrasing do more than confuse the interviewee. They sabotage your search for clarity. A negative question like, "You didn't steal the wallet, did you?" invites a simple no, requiring no effort from the interviewee to construct a lie. Multi-part questions such as, "Where were you last night, and did you notice anything unusual?" muddy the waters. If the interviewee hesitates or fumbles, you won't know which part of the question triggered the reaction. Ambiguity is another pitfall. A vague question like, "Did you see anything unusual last week?" allows the interviewee to latch on to any event, true or false, that fits their narrative. These mistakes aren't just errors, they actively assist deception, giving the interviewee a roadmap to evade your line of inquiry. The authors make it clear, precision isn't optional, it's survival. Verbal red flags are where deception starts to unravel audibly. Some responses stand out for their sheer inappropriateness, like a suspect suddenly asking, "What evidence do you have?" instead of answering your question. Others are too polite, buttering you up with compliments or over-formal language to disarm your suspicions. Then there's the artful dodge, responses heavy with qualifiers like, "to be honest," or "basically," which sound reassuring but subtly deflect responsibility. Failing or refusing to answer directly is another hallmark of deception. An interviewee might feign selective memory, repeat your question to buy time, or provide a non-answer that stalls without addressing the core issue. These verbal cues, layered with qualifiers or dressed up in evasion, are like breadcrumbs leading you toward the truth. But only if you're listening with the trained ear that Spy the Lie teaches you to cultivate. Your body doesn't lie, even when your words do. Spy the Lie details how behavioral red flags, like fidgeting, shifting posture, or hiding the face, often betray attempts at deception. The authors explain that these physical reactions are subconscious, triggered by anxiety or discomfort. For example, a suspect might cover their mouth mid-sentence, as though literally trying to suppress the truth, or nod their head while verbally denying a claim, a disconnect between action and speech that shouts, "I'm lying." However, not all body language is incriminating. Some people fidget habitually or avoid eye contact for reasons unrelated to deceit, like cultural norms or neurodivergence. This is why context is critical. Behavioral signs alone aren't enough to convict someone in the court of truth. But when paired with verbal red flags, they complete the cluster of deception. Culture complicates everything. What's suspicious in one context might be entirely normal in another. Spy the Lie emphasizes how understanding cultural and individual differences is vital when interpreting signs of deception. For instance, in some cultures, averting your gaze is a sign of respect, not guilt. In others, excessive politeness may be a cultural standard rather than a manipulative tactic. Individual habits, like a naturally quiet demeanor or a tendency to speak in vague terms, can also mimic red flags. Without this awareness, you risk misjudging honesty based on your biases rather than the interviewee's truth. The authors encourage approaching each conversation with humility, always considering the possibility that your instincts might be clouded by cultural ignorance or personal prejudice. In a world as diverse as yours, context isn't just helpful, it's essential. Lying is hard work, and the book doesn't shy away from explaining the psychological toll it takes. To lie effectively, a person must create a convincing story, remember its details, and ensure it aligns with existing facts, all while suppressing the truth. This juggling act creates cognitive overload, often leading to slips in behavior or speech. Studies cited in Spy the Lie reveal that liars experience heightened stress, which manifests physically, like increased fidgeting or changes in vocal tone, and mentally, in the form of hesitations or inconsistencies. The authors liken this to holding an inflated balloon underwater. The longer you try, the more likely it is to pop. Lying might be a universal human behavior, but it's one that exacts a steep mental and emotional price. The system capitalizes on this strain, turning the liar's own mind against them. The brilliance of Spy the Lie lies in its practicality. The system isn't reserved for interrogations in CIA safehouses. It's a toolkit for your everyday life. Imagine using these techniques in a job interview to discern whether a candidate is inflating their credentials. Or picture yourself in a personal relationship, catching subtle cues that your partner might be omitting something important. The authors stress that you don't need a polygraph or years of training to apply their methods. By asking the right questions, observing carefully for clusters, and maintaining an awareness of context, you can uncover hidden truths in any setting. The system empowers you to navigate your world with sharper perception, whether you're closing a business deal, resolving a family conflict, or simply seeking clarity in a murky conversation. It's not about paranoia, it's about clarity. But truth-seeking is about more than catching lies. It's about strengthening the foundation of your relationships. The authors of Spy the Lie frame their work not as a weapon for suspicion, but as a tool for fostering trust and integrity. When you understand how deception works, you're less likely to fall prey to it, but you're also better equipped to communicate honestly yourself. This creates a ripple effect, encouraging transparency in those around you. In a world where half-truths often masquerade as facts, the pursuit of honesty becomes a revolutionary act. The system at its core is less about exposing deceit and more about empowering authenticity. It's a call to action for a more truthful, connected world, a philosophy that resonates far beyond the pages of the book. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the art of detecting deception. If you found these insights as fascinating as I did, give this a like, share it with your most skeptical friend, and hit that subscribe button for more explorations into the complex web of human behavior. Until next time, stay curious, stay honest, and keep questioning the world around you. See you soon.